What if you wake up tomorrow and petrol prices suddenly double? Your flight gets canceled, grocery prices rise within days, factories slow down, markets wobble, and for an entire month, no naval patrol protects the world's most important oil route.
That's exactly what could happen if Iran decides to close the Strait of Hormuz.
But how can one narrow waterway shake the entire global economy? To understand that, we need to rewind to a tiny stretch of water that quietly powers modern life. Look at this map. Right here, between Iran in the north and Oman in the south, sits a narrow stretch of water called the Strait of Hormuz.
It connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea.
That means every ship leaving the Gulf has to pass through this single corridor to reach the open ocean. At its narrowest point, the strait is only about 33 kilometers wide. But the lanes that oil tankers actually use are far smaller, barely 3 kilometers wide in each direction. So every day, the world's largest oil tankers are forced to pass through this tiny bottleneck. And that is exactly why this small stretch of water holds enormous power over the global economy. Now here is the scale becomes clear. Just think about it. Every single day, around 20 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Now you may ask, how big is that number? The entire world consumes about 100 million barrels of oil a day. So nearly 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil on Earth passes through this one narrow corridor. And these ships are not coming from just one country. Oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran all leave the Persian Gulf through this same passage. And it's not only about oil. Qatar, one of the world's largest LNG exporters, ships most of its gas through this route to power homes and industries across Asia and Europe, which means this tiny strait silently carries a massive share of the energy that runs the modern world. But what happens if that flow suddenly stops? The biggest customers of Gulf oil are in Asia. Countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea import a large share of their energy from the Persian Gulf. And most of that energy must pass through the Strait of Hormuz before reaching their ports. For Japan and South Korea, more than half of their imported crude travels through this corridor. For India, a huge portion of its Middle Eastern oil also comes through the same route. And China, the world's largest oil importer, relies heavily on shipments moving through this passage. So if the Strait of Hormuz suddenly closes, these economies feel the shock first. Refineries struggle to secure supply. Fuel prices surge. Governments scramble to release emergency reserves. Right now, the strait is still open, but tensions in the region mean disruption is always a real possibility. If Iran really wanted to stop ships from passing, how could it actually do it? Now imagine this from Iran's perspective. If it wanted to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, it would not need to block the entire passage. It would only need to make it too dangerous for ships to enter. One way is through naval mines. These explosives can be dropped into the water. Even a few mines can shut down shipping because no tanker captain will risk sailing through a possible minefield. Then come the coastal missiles. From bases along the Iranian coastline, anti-ship missiles can strike vessels moving through the narrow lanes. Iran also relies on swarm boats. Dozens of fast attack boats can rush toward a tanker at once, creating chaos in a corridor only a few kilometers wide. And now, there are drones. Both aerial drones and explosive drone boats can target commercial vessels, which means Iran doesn't need to sink many ships. It only needs to create fear. Because the moment ships stop entering the strait, the global energy supply begins to choke. Would ships actually stop sailing through it anytime soon? The Strait of Hormuz doesn't need to be physically blocked for the crisis to begin. All it takes is a warning from insurance companies. The moment insurers label the area a war risk zone, everything changes overnight. Insurance premiums for oil tankers shoot up, sometimes by millions of dollars per voyage. Shipping companies suddenly face a brutal choice: sail through a potential battlefield or stay out of the Gulf entirely. And most of them choose the second option. Tankers stop entering, ships wait outside the Gulf, oil terminals begin filling up with cargo that cannot leave. So the flow of oil does not stop because ships are sunk. It stops because nobody wants to be the next target. And the moment tankers hesitate at the entrance of this narrow strait, millions of barrels of oil stop reaching the market. And the consequences move far beyond sheer shortage. When millions of barrels suddenly stop reaching the market, the shock hits fast. Oil prices shoot up first. Traders see supply tightening and crude prices jump within hours. Soon after, you feel it at the pump. Filling your car suddenly costs far more than it did a few days ago. Airlines feel it too. Fuel costs surge, ticket prices climb, and some flights simply call off their service. Shipping companies start paying more to move cargo across oceans. And when transport becomes expensive, the effect reaches you again. Groceries cost more. Everyday products start getting pricier. Deliveries slow down. So a disruption in one narrow strait in the Middle East doesn't stay there. It slowly works its way into your daily life. If this route becomes dangerous, can the world simply send its oil somewhere else? At first, it seems like the answer is yes. Saudi Arabia built a massive pipeline called the East-West Pipeline. It moves oil across the country to ports on the Red Sea, completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. The United Arab Emirates has a similar route. The Habshan-Fujairah pipeline sends oil straight to the Gulf of Oman, avoiding the strait as well. For a moment, it looks like the problem is solved. But if you look at the numbers, the picture changes. Every day, about 20 million barrels of oil normally pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Those alternative pipelines together can carry only a small slice of that amount, which means most of the oil inside the Persian Gulf still has only one exit, the Strait of Hormuz. And if that exit becomes dangerous, the world has a much bigger problem than just expensive fuel. If the Strait of Hormuz becomes too dangerous for ships, the crisis doesn't stay economic for long. It quickly turns military. The United States already maintains a powerful naval presence in the region. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, based in Bahrain, constantly patrols the Persian Gulf. Now that the shipping through the strait is restricted, they may attempt to make sure oil tankers can still pass through. Warships may begin escorting oil tankers through the narrow passage. Naval patrols may expand. Surveillance aircraft may monitor the waterway. And if mines appear in the shipping lanes, specialized vessels may move in to hunt and clear them. That's what speculations suggest. But clearing sea mines is slow and dangerous work. Each one has to be detected, approached carefully, and then neutralized. Which means reopening a mined strait could take weeks, sometimes even months. And history shows just how dangerous that process can become. This would not be the first time the Strait of Hormuz faced this kind of danger. During the 1980s Iran-Iraq War, the region experienced what became known as the Tanker War. Both sides began attacking oil tankers moving through the Persian Gulf. Missiles struck ships, and naval mines were scattered across shipping lanes. Over the course of the conflict, hundreds of commercial vessels were attacked, forcing the United States Navy to escort tankers through the Gulf. And the tension did not end there. In 2019, several oil tankers were damaged near the Strait of Hormuz in a series of mysterious explosions. Each time, global markets threw an instant reaction. So this narrow waterway can become a crisis point very quickly. Is history going to repeat itself? If it does, it will create a paradox for Iran too. Closing the Strait of Hormuz would also hurt Iran itself. Most of Iran's oil exports leave the country through this same waterway. It's about 1.6 million barrels per day, depending on the route to reach buyers abroad. If the strait shuts down completely, those exports stop too. That means lost revenue, blocks trade, and growing pressure on Iran's own economy. Imports entering the country through the Gulf would also struggle to arrive. So Iran faces a strategic dilemma. It can threaten the strait, disrupt shipping, and send oil prices surging. But keeping it closed for long would damage its own economy just as badly. That's why analysts believe Iran usually prefers short disruptions and pressure tactics instead of a permanent shutdown. What do you think? Will the Strait of Hormuz remain open for the Oriental countries? Will it reopen anytime soon for the Western world? Leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll see you soon in the next video.